Good morning, magical seekers. Brian here with BMK Magic Explorations. It's been a little bit since my last video, which I could see didn't quite get uh, didn't quite draw the attention I was hoping for, but then again, this channel's still new, and I'm not expecting things to move at a super brisk pace. But regardless, we have some reasons why we're getting around to the next video, and in this one we're going to explore at least some the magic and give a little bit of an overview of what's known as the Wheel of the Year. Now, this is a concept commonly found in, I'd say, possibly a majority, but not nearly all of the Neopagan religions and traditions. Basically what it is a calendar of festivals, or as otherwise known, Sabbats. In some cases, which is kind of another way of saying holy day. I guess it wouldn't be entirely wrong if you were a neo-pagan or follow one of the religions or one of the traditions, either way, or, count yourself as neo-pagan one way or another, to also refer to them as similar to holidays for a neo-pagan. I have talked about them that way sometimes. Anyway, there are about 8 of them. Each around about the 4 quarters and the 4 main seasonal equinox and solstices. So, as it goes, we'll go over them briefly here. I will mention that this is not going to be an entirely comprehensive list, and we're not going to get into them all in greater depth here. I'm kind of going to do that more as they come up. And also with various neo-pagan religions and traditions, there are some variations on this Wheel of the Year concept, and they also have their own other, some of them at least, many do have their other own holidays, festivals, and etc., which they also observe. So this is just a general overview. Anyway, generally we start off with the winter solstice, known as Yule or Yuletide, which happens typically about December 20th to 23rd. It's basically a celebration, a festival that would, well, it's about the winter solstice for one thing, and for another, you've made it to that part of winter, at least back when the original Germanic and Norse heathen-type traditions back in the day celebrated it. Part of it was you managed to survive that long, and you were looking forward to making it through the rest of the winter and hopefully having a nice year coming up. In many ways, it would remind us of the modern-day religious and somewhat secular holiday of Christmas. At least they have a lot in common in some ways. Secondarily, we come up on Imbolc, or Imbolc. I'm not sure. I usually pronounce it Imbolc, and forgive me if I slaughter any of these pronunciations again. It usually comes up about 2nd February. And basically, it and the one coming up after it, Ostara, which is actually coming up briefly, so I'm not going to go over it right in detail until a bit. They are basically kind of about ringing in and celebrating the upcoming and then the upon us spring season, to put it lightly. Anyway, Ostara typically falls between 19th and 22nd March, and is partially in celebration of the spring equinox, so that's not all it's about. This year it will come up on the 19th, and you guys can expect me to go into it a little bit deeper in a video celebrating it then some. And it's, as I said, it basically celebrates the spring equinox, and that's not really all it's about, but it is a fun one in a way. Like I said, I'm not going to go into it too much right now, but it would kind of remind us a little bit in some ways of our modern-day religious and secular holiday of Easter. At least they have some things in common. Then we have basically Beltane, and which comes on 2nd May, and Litha, which is for the summer solstice, which comes between 19th and 23rd of June. These basically are celebrating how do you say, the sun in the summer season in a way. As a matter of fact, with Beltane, you could say it's got a lot in common with the modern holiday of May Day. Maypoles and everything like that. And then, of course, after Litha, on August 1st, we have Lammas, which also goes by another name, but I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. It's kind of a toughie, and I'd hate to really slaughter that. And Lammas is so much easier to say. Anyway, it comes about 1st August, and it, along with Mabon, which is for the fall equinox, and is, again, I'm not going to get into more detail until we're upon it, but anyway, Lammas and Mabon generally are celebrations of the harvest season, in their own right. And finally, we have what's known as Samhain, which usually comes, pretty much always October 31st. Though a lot of times, it is generally celebrated a lot of times from basically from sunrise to sunset, and some would consider it to extend, from basically the very end of October 30th through the very beginning of November 1st, which makes kind of sense. It's basically a celebration that comes at the end of the cycle, typically. And for many pagans, including, the religion of Wicca and its main traditions, would be known as the New Year for the Wiccan New Year, or you could also call it a pagan or Neopagan New Year in a way. And basically it represents, the very last harvest, or very last time you could get a harvest or crops from before, the oncoming winter, and late fall for that matter. And it's also a celebration of ancestors and the thinning of the veil between worlds, the living and the dead, things like that. And it's also a good time to do divination, magic, many other things go into it. And Samhain is considered in a lot of religions and traditions in Neopaganism to be possibly among the most important, or one of the most highly celebrated of these. Though, again, that's not universal. And like I said, this particular Wheel of the Year calendar is not 100%. There are variations on it, and I'll introduce those some as they come up. And I figure I'll do it this way, which is I'll introduce a different variation on different years as this channel goes by, where possible. Anyway, it's a very good calendar for celebrating the cycles of nature, which is basically what it's about. You're celebrating how, the sun and the moon, well, mostly the sun in this case, I guess you could say. It's representative of how the seasons change and how we also do with it. The cycles of nature are pretty much what the Wheel of the Year is all about. In Wicca, I guess you could say, and its traditions, and I think it's present elsewhere too, you also have what I believe, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it, but they're called Estivits, I think, which are celebrating they're celebrated on or observed on the 13 full moons of each year and follow the lunar cycle. Whereas the Wheel of the Year kind of more follows the solar cycle in a way, but overall the seasonal cycle. And it's a very important concept. The Wheel of the Year is one thing that brings the Neopagans closer to nature, in a way, as we're observing how the seasons change and how the cycles of nature change. Clearly with man-made global warming driven climate change, as far as I'm concerned, yes, it is a thing. Clearly our seasons and all, and the way things can go, are a bit more out of whack, I guess you could say, than they're supposed to be. For instance, here in East Texas, it seems like some of the seasons are lasting too long or too short. We barely get a spring and almost seem to go straight into summer these days. Or, it's feeling way too warm here in East Texas, way into the beginning or midwinter where you'd think it'd be very, very cold by then. Yeah, and that's even unusual here, although I'm in a state that's basically a Gulf Coast state, and that shouldn't be considered terrible, terrible unusual, but believe me, even for this part of East Texas, it's gotten pretty weird. And so, celebrating the Wheel of the Year and the cycles of nature with that, along with, I guess you could say, like I said, the estimates for the lunar cycles is an important thing for Neopagans, and I believe in it's a good thing to observe. Also gives us 8 different times a year to celebrate, along with 13 for the estimates if you follow those. So it's all well and good. And like I said, we've got a star coming up, so I'll get into that one a bit more as it comes up. I just didn't want to go to them in way, way too much detail right now because it's a lot to go over. Make sure you got well researched and know about. And if I had to sit here and talk about all that, unfortunately, we'd probably be here all dadgum morning. Oh, and yes, it is morning where I am here. I think I said good morning, didn't I? Yeah. Anyway, I've sometimes been asked by others, well, would paleopagans, those of the deep past, actually have known about or followed the Wheel of the Year as neopagans today know it? Well, the answer is kind of a little bit twofold, and it's not all that complicated. You see, the Wheel of the Year is it is known by neopagan religions and traditions these days, is more of a recent modern day invention and adoption. Well, in that case, it wouldn't be something paleopagans back in the day would have actually known about yet or been following themselves, on one hand. Whereas on the other, we can say this, that from about the time that our ancestors went from being mostly nomadic hunter-gatherers to developing agriculture and horticulture, farming and crops and keeping animals for their own food and other purposes. Well, we could say in that case, all the way back to ancient Egypt, or everywhere from ancient Mesopotamia to ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, etc., following the seasonal cycles, and they were heavily relying on the observance and following of the seasonal cycles, the sun, the moon, what they knew of the planets, the stars. And so they did observe and follow that very closely and gave it a lot of respect, reverence, and in many cases even worship. Well, it kind of makes sense, if you think about it. Like I said, if you're going from having been mostly hunter-gatherers to forming societies where you're relying on being able to raise animals and plants and with agriculture and horticulture as your way of having food and other resources, which helps to have society established and keep it going. Yeah, the cycles of nature, such as the Wheel of the Year represents, would be very important to be paying attention to. So they wouldn't have really known of the Wheel of the Year as a concept as modern neopagans do today, since it's, like I said, a more recent innovation and of modern times. But certainly the concept probably would not, if, say, we had one of them here now, a paleopagan brought from a time machine, I'm pretty sure the concept wouldn't be one that they would find completely alien or would have a hard time understanding or being able to kind of get adapted to. It'd probably make a lot of sense to them if they were exposed to it, much as it does to we modern-day neopagans today. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that little brief overview and all. Certainly, I know there are others who can do it even better than I can. Unfortunately, I didn't even have a graphic to show. Still need to invest at some point in getting this phone upgraded some and getting some video editing software so I can do a bit more. Now, I do have a few recommendations and links from my preferred YouTubers on all this. There's Spells 8. They give us a pretty good overview of the Wheel of the Year and the estimates, and all their meanings from the perspective of the Neopagan religion of Wicca and many of its traditions. Then there's Symbol Sage, who gives us just a basic overview of it pretty well. And it's a fairly short one, under 5 minutes, I think, but still very informative. And finally, we also have the Norse Witch, who's a recent addition of mine, too. She's in Germany and practices Germanic Neopaganism or possibly heathenry, but she also was a Wiccan practitioner and kind of blends that, and she goes over how she observes and celebrates throughout the Wheel of the Year, and it's kind of interesting to see her input. So I will leave links to those for everybody down in the comments sections, down in the description. Sorry, I don't know why I said comment section. So those who might care to check out their videos on that and learn a little more can do so if you like. And I'm certain there are plenty of other channels who cover this topic too that are not within my preferred YouTubers list yet, but I'd say if you want to know more, look up some. And like I said, we're going to go over more each of these more in detail as they come up some. Kind of will be my way of celebrating them in a way here through this channel. Well, part of it, for me anyway. As well as also being, well, I like to spread the information some. Even though I may not always be the best at it, I try. If you enjoy this channel's content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And please don't hesitate to leave any questions, comments, or suggestions down in the comment section below. Well, again, I'll get my warning, just trolls unwelcome. In the meantime, I hope that everyone will have a quite wonderful Wednesday morning. And hopefully have a wonderful Wednesday. And hopefully I will see you all again in the next video. Well, in the meantime, I hope that this video and this channel have helped to bring a bit more magic to your lives. Take care.